everyone, just want to say thanks for those of you who are coming by and choosing to spend their time with me on this channel. As always, it's incredibly appreciated. So, I hope you're ready to crack into another story of the strongest Earth in the multiverse, Legal Edition. Stay tuned! What the hell are you doing here, Electra? Matt gruffed out. He really was doomed to encounter her wherever he went, even on the other side of the country. I thought you'd be glad to see me, Matthew. She grinned, casually, slipping out of Matt's grasp easily as she stepped directly away from him. You were last time. I've gotten wiser since then, Matt sighed. And I know for a fact that you showing up when someone's planning to kill me is never good, especially from past experience. I said I was sorry about that. Besides, from the conversation I just overheard, you apparently have just been hired to kill me, Matt spat out. Like I wouldn't have pointed you out when you were watching us if I wanted you dead. Or done it myself. You and I both know I'm very capable of it. When I saw someone was fishing around for someone to remove a pesky lawyer from the world, I realized that there were only two people that could encompass. Either you or Jen. And unfortunately I happen to like both of you, so I figured I should insert myself into the situation. I assume you prefer me over an actual assassin. Matt let himself relax slightly. Am I supposed to believe that you just showed up here by yourself? Nobody sent you here? Maybe Stick? Screw Stick! He has nothing to do with this, she said, more harshly than Matt expected to hear. Did something? It doesn't matter, Electra replied quickly. You don't seem to understand the hornet's nest that you're kicking, Matthew. And for once, believe it or not, I'm not here to make your life worse. You'll see that very soon. Having me around is only going to benefit you. You expect me to believe that? Believe it or not, I'm here to make your life better. In fact, I'll start right now. You're investigating Wright. He's got fingers in just about every pie in the city. You won't get anyone to turn on him directly. You have to be creative, Matthew. And what's that supposed to mean? When am I ever so straightforward? You'll see what I mean. Soon. Maybe ask around to some of the people that you might think are your friends. I'll drop by later. Be sure to come up with a good lie when you introduce me to your friends. Things will go over better if I only have to explain things to them once. I'd rather not explain things to you and them separately, she smirked. Do you think I'm just gonna let you... Matt stopped as Electra's hand draped over the fire alarm. Well, you could certainly try to start a fight here, and then people will be running through this area when they think there's a fire. It'll be interesting for people to know that Daredevil is out of New York. I look forward to the next time we speak, Matthew. Until then, be careful around White. He may be nothing but a big bully, but he's connected to something bigger than even he thinks. With those words, the girl disappeared out the window of the storage area, Matt clenching his fist, knowing that his life just got way more complicated. The defense wrestling area was more intense than anything the newly branded Wright and Murdock legal team had experienced in a very long time. Any of them. Phoenix was relying on his far more experienced friend to be more put together. His perfect win streak at this point meant that this case should be nothing more than a walk in the park for him. But his quiet stoicness was unignorable, which made Phoenix think that he was nervous, which made him nervous, which made him sweat puddles. Geez, a lot of tension in here, huh? Maya smiled shyly. You do realize it's your life on the line, Miss Faye? Francisca asked, the first person to break the silence in the room outside of Maya. Maya just smiled wider as she turned to Francisca. I told you I trust you, right? Maya grinned. Francisca didn't budge an inch in response on the outside. She had enough time to figure out how to maintain her demeanor. On the inside, it was a different story. Her stomach still felt like it was tearing itself apart. Every time Maya Faye said those words, it was like it lit a fire under her, to protect her client. Her stint as a defense attorney was temporary. She was a prosecutor, for God's sake. It was just to learn Matt Murdock's tricks. She used to repeat that phrase like a mantra in the early days of her work with the attorney. It used to work a lot better back then. I'm glad, Matt finally said, snapping Francisca out of it. Thankfully, his voice hadn't been the least bit rattled. Even though something had clearly been running through his mind, he was still capable of being focused and sure, which gave the others something to be sure of, which made Francisca especially grateful, given she wasn't sure of much else. I want you to be as calm as possible, Maya. You believe in your team, and you have one that believes in you. That's the best shot you can have. Maya smiled as Phoenix grinned too. He was right. Matt was totally right. They had this in the bag. He felt stupid for even doubting himself. As Phoenix relaxed, Matt smiled to himself too, hearing the collective heartbeat of the room going down, just in time for the bailiff to walk in. It was game time. Taking their place at the stands was a task in of itself. Miles Edgeworth's stone-cold sight made every person in their group one by one feel like their brains were freezing. Matt and Maya got off easy, but the others... His glare leveled on Phoenix with a glint of recognition that flitted almost immediately to animosity. The ability to flip so quickly like that, it was so impressive to Phoenix, but it was also incredibly terrifying. The look he gave Francisca, though, it burrowed deep into her skin, like an itch that struck to her very core, one she would need a bone drill to scratch. A look of confusion at first, and then recognition, and finally disappointment. "Excuse me, Your Honor. I believe that there is a prosecutor in the defense stand," Miles said, his tone making it sound like he was giving her one last chance to step back to where she belonged. Matt placed a hand on Francisca's shoulder. "If you want to go." "I have stood by your side in trials before this one," Francisca cut him off. "We both know this is different," Matt said back. Francisca felt her body lock up. Did Murdock know she was having doubts? Or was he just talking about her brother being across the stand? That had to be it, but his voice just sounded so understanding. Like he wasn't just excusing her from going against her brother, but like he was excusing her if she wanted to go back to prosecution. No, that was just in her head. A ridiculous notion, and one that irritated her to no end for some reason. "I am a prosecutor, but first and foremost I am assistant to the defense, and Von Karma does their job perfectly." Francisca's eye twitched as she coiled her hand around her whip. "Your so-called job," Miles began, only for the sound of a whip to cut him off, his eye twitching. "Very well. The prosecution is ready, Your Honor." "You really hired someone scary, Matt," Phoenix whispered to his friend before straightening his spine. "The defense is ready, Your Honor." They had only been here for an hour, but it felt like 1,000 years. Edgeworth was way worse than pain. Phoenix felt like he was bashing his head against a wall here, and Matt was only able to pick up some of the slack. Finally, though, it felt like he had something to push Edgeworth back on. "Objection!" Phoenix shouted, at Gumshoe on the witness stand. The words began to feel more natural to him. "I was at the scene, Your Honor. There are only a few sets of footprints behind. None of them belong to Maya Fey. If there was a struggle, like you're saying the scene suggests, wouldn't there be evidence that my clients had even set foot in the office recently?" "Well, now that you mention it, pal," Gumshoe began. "Hold it," Edgeworth shouted back. "All Miss Fey had to do was not wear shoes at the crime scene. Such a thing is hardly impossible." "That assertion is highly speculative," Matt replied. "I think what's more important is the pool of blood. You know, the one that you claimed is enough to show that Miss Fey is dead, despite no tests being done on it. According to the crime scene report, that blood is pooled in one key location, meaning that if she was killed, as the prosecution claims, it would have been in one attack, not a drawn-out struggle. That throws nearly your entire scene into question." "Meaning the victim had to be killed in a way other than what the prosecution said," Phoenix replied, the spread of realization spreading to the others. "He now lacks a murder method, a murder weapon. Honestly, he might even lack a scene, a body, a murder altogether," Francisca thought aloud. Together they had managed not only to draw out Miles Edgeworth into making a mistake, but they destroyed half the foundation his case was built on. So the fact that he still had a smile on his face made Francisca very uncomfortable. "When did you receive this information from the CSI, Mr. Murdock?" Edgeworth asked, evenly. "At about 5 p.m. last night," Matt responded, Phoenix puffing out his chest in response. Their information was up to date, not even a full day old. There was no reason he could find any fault in it, especially not when the cops were on his team. He could practically feel his objection finger twitching in anticipation. "I see. Well, I'm afraid that information is outdated." The mood in the room plummeted at Edgeworth's words. Phoenix froze in confusion. Maya stepped back in shock. Even Matt was gripping his cane tighter in anticipation. Francisca, though, she just watched, her mind praying for what she knew was about to happen to not. "You see, another examination of the crime scene took place this morning at my request. Not only were they able to determine the blood pattern was spread out enough to warrant the skirmish theory, but the way it was spread out indicates a short-term struggle, followed by one lethal strike. Exactly what the prosecution alleges. In other words, the blood pools were perfect. For me, that is." "Objection!" The desk pounded, but it wasn't Phoenix or Matt. Yes, Miss Von Karma? The judge responded, half hidden behind his desk. You expect me to believe you just happened to order this investigation, Miles Edgeworth? You knew damn well there was no way this would travel the defense's way in such a short period. Franziska growled. You were trying to make sure we didn't know anything. Are you accusing me of foul play, Miss Von Karma? Miles asked. I think you know damn well what I'm accusing you of. You've had hours to formulate an idea based on this. You hid evidence convenient to you until the last possible moment. She crossed her arms. She knew it wasn't exactly an illegal thing for prosecutors to do, but it left a very bad taste in her mouth. Interesting. I believe you might be projecting a bit, Miss Von Karma. Haven't you been accused of the same thing a few times in your career? Miles asked, Franziska's throat forcefully closing in response. Her mind went to multiple instances in the time she was active before she met Murdock. At least 3 times when she used the same trick. When, a Von Karma's case must be perfect, she muttered to herself. Perfection, true perfection, was making sure your case was perfect. Bulletproof. It meant making sure your opponent was unprepared. Like a game of chess. In all honesty, her father would probably be proud to look at Miles right now. He would tell Franziska to snap out of her daze, to put her head back into the game if she wanted to be taken seriously. But this wasn't a game. And she wasn't fighting for her reputation. Why didn't he understand that? She was fighting for her life, or maybe she was the problem. She wouldn't have hesitated before. Objection! Phoenix shouted, the sound oddly comforting to Franziska in the moment. Alright, Edgeworth, I'm willing to bite. If this really did happen, where's the body? Well, we already know it was taken, don't we, Wright? Do we? Phoenix said. The crowd pulled into his voice. He looked to Matt in reassurance, and Matt nodded, a grin on his face. They weren't out of this thing yet. Things were about to take a turn for the better. It was like everyone on the defense just knew this, believed it. Like an aura had surrounded them, telling them that things were going to be okay. You said it yourself, Edgeworth. The pools of blood were perfect for you. In your updated report, it shows that the patterns fit your theory exactly. But you know what it doesn't show? Not anywhere does it mention smearing of the blood. In other words, it spilled on the ground and stayed there. So, Phoenix continued, Mia Fey's body was never moved, Matt replied. But if the body was never moved, then why isn't it still at the crime scene? The judge wondered aloud. It was then that Matt Murdock would say the most outlandish thing Franziska had heard in the 2 years of working for him. Maybe there isn't a body to move, Matt replied, as calmly as ever, to Maya's clear shock. She trembled, a tear filling the corner of her eyes at the thought that maybe, just maybe, her sister was okay. Edgeworth, meanwhile, flinched in response, pounding his fist on his desk. Hold it! Do you mean to say that the victim isn't dead? What kind of ludicrous... Objection! Phoenix shouted back. Miss Fey could still very well be dead, Phoenix said, Matt sitting calmly next to him, fighting the desire to tell his friend that their mentor was in fact still okay. He at least had to keep that a secret until Mia was definitely no longer in danger. But the fact remains that your scene as it stands is in contrast to your version of events. Without an explanation for what happened to the body and how it could have been moved in a way that defies logic, your theory falls apart. I think even you have to concede that point, Mr. Edgeworth, Phoenix said, a grin from ear to ear on his cheek. He felt a wave of relief wash over him. They had found some leeway. Maybe, just maybe, they'd be able to save Maya after all. Even Edgeworth's normal smarmy face wasn't recovering as quickly as it did before. But eventually, it did recover. Very well, Mr. Wright, Mr. Murdock, Miss Von Karma. Edgeworth cleared his throat, his eyes narrowing daggers at the legal team in front of him. Phoenix flinched in response, feeling like his spine had just been frozen at its root. You want evidence? Well, I suppose eyewitness testimony will have to suffice. He allowed himself a grin. I was wondering when this was going to come up. Matt sighed. I definitely forgot about this, Phoenix groaned. There was a witness? Maya asked, turning to the mentally preparing legal team, leaving the burden of explanation to fall on the only person in the room not officially there in a lawyer capacity. A foolish woman, Franziska replied, and one who's almost certainly about to lie through her teeth. Franziska was correct. April May did indeed lie through her teeth. First she claimed that Maya had bludgeoned her sister on top of her head, an impossibility given Maya's height. Then she claimed that the murder weapon was stabbed into Mia's side, which in her mind explained the blood. unlikely given that the thinker was a blunt weapon. While Phoenix took a moment to undo the lies that came his way, Matt's expanded hearing told him before a lie even hit his ears, which in all honesty wasn't even necessary. They had even got her to admit that she was wiretapping Mia's office, given that she claimed that she knew the statue was a clock, something she could only know about if she heard Mia talking about it. Of course, Matt knew that too, but Maya's phone came in handy for proving it. Edgeworth silently fumed in the corner as his witness was dismantled piece by piece. The killing blow, however, was when Matt once again opened his mouth. "Miss May, I think you and I both know that you committed enough perjury to land yourself in jail, if the judge were a less patient man." Matt replied, trying to be as civil as possible, but this judge, he was just beginning to get on his nerves. Judges were usually lenient with prosecutors, an annoying fact that he had come to know very, very well in his legal career, but he'd never seen one so lenient with such an obviously duplicitous witness. "And given that, I think it's only fair that we start looking at you with some level of suspicion." "Ha! You stupid lawyer. You think I committed the crime? I got an alibi," Matt replied. "You received a drink cart from the bellhop at the exact time of the supposed murder," Matt said, Edgeworth stepping back in shock. He expected the defense to fall into the trap he'd laid. He laid it perfectly. They'd push for her alibi, the bellhop would give it, and then the case would be over. They weren't supposed to know about this yet. Well, yeah," April May shot back. "Yeah, that." "I wasn't saying you should be under any suspicion," Matt continued calmly. "But the gentleman in your company..." The girl's eyes shot wide open, Edgeworth pounding on the desk in response. "Hold it! How could you possibly know about that?" Edgeworth had made sure to hide the other person in Miss May's company perfectly. He'd even sworn the bellhop to secrecy. How could... Edgeworth's voice receded into his throat as Matt held up a piece of paper. "Sworn affidavit from the witness you already interviewed, Mr. Edgeworth. In it, he swears that he saw Miss May with a rather large man. A man who, based on the bellhop's description, matches the personnel file of one Mr. Red White, who Miss May happens to be an employee of." Matt grinned, hearing Edgeworth's teeth grinding to near dust. "Nice try hiding it. Very classy move," he said as the gavel came down, the trial coming to a close for the day. Soon after, the judge ordered the defense and prosecution to secure Mr. White's testimony. Walking out the courtroom doors, Phoenix clapped Matt on the shoulder, heaving a sigh of relief from his mouth. "You really saved me out there, Matt. Geez, you don't go into things unprepared, do you?" Phoenix laughed. "You no slouch yourself, Nick. Your blood analysis is half the reason we got this far." Matt grinned back. "You really seem to cover my mistakes out there." "Your mistakes?" Phoenix laughed. "You're too humble for your own good, man." Phoenix nudged Matt. One of the virtues of being a good Catholic." Matt smiled, Phoenix rolling his eyes. "So, this White guy, do you think..." "He's guilty, Nick," Matt replied, not missing a beat. "If not for murder, at the bare minimum for assault. The fact that Mia was assaulted seems to be the only thing not up for a debate in there." "How can you be so sure?" Phoenix asked. "What do you think, Phoenix? Based on every piece of evidence that you've seen so far, what does your gut as an attorney tell you?" Matt asked, Phoenix pausing in response. Slowly he straightened up his slouching posture, a clenching fist taking the place of his slack hand as he took a breath in. "He's guilty," Phoenix replied, not missing a beat. "And he's trying to sink Maya." "So, let's do what a good lawyer does. Let's go save her," Matt said. "Yeah, let's go get him," Phoenix replied confidently, not noticing that a key member of their team wasn't sharing in their victory. "Every dirty trick in the book. You used every dirty trick in the..." Francisca growled, wrapping her whip in her knuckles, as Miles simply watched her. "Every trick I used was a deceitful mess that muddled the truth so much it took us ages to unravel it," Francisca shouted, snapping her whip next to Miles. "Miles Edgeworth, you complete and total imbecile. Do you know what would have happened if anyone other than our team was in the courtroom? That girl would have been convicted on a mess of muddled lies from a half-brain-dead woman in pink who thinks feigning ignorance of basic human interaction gives her a shield." "Our team?" Miles asked. "What?" Francisca responded. "You just referred to Wright and Murdock's team as our team, meaning yours, I'm assuming. A defense team. I am a temporary legal aid. I give my all. Every trick you got so angry with is second-hand in the prosecutorial playbook. Half of them Von Karma taught you before you could properly walk." Miles replied to Francisca's now silent body. Those are the tools that lead to victory. Foolish, you foolishly pathetic excuse for a foolish man. The sound of Francisca's whip echoed easily a dozen times in the space of a few moments. Winning? A woman's life is on the line and you worry about winning? Von Karma wins at all costs, Francisca. A fact that we're supposed to know. Getting all defendants declared guilty to ensure that no guilty escape our clutches. That's what Von Karma taught us. That line of thinking is that of a prosecutor, Miles responded. Something that evidently isn't in line with your current thought patterns. Francisca stiffened even more. Tread lightly with what you suggest, Miles Edgeworth, Francisca replied. I'm simply suggesting, Miles began, walking closer to Francisca, pressing his finger against the pin on her person, the pin that marked her as a prosecutor. That if you can't abide by what this badge means, Francisca, it might be time to turn it in. He walked away from her. Francisca wanted to scream. She wanted to point out that she had achieved her rank as a child, that she was born to be a prosecutor, that it was in her blood. But no sound came from her mouth. No fury came to her body. She just let her arms hang to her sides as she silently walked away. Hey everybody, I just want to say I really appreciate you guys showing up for this video again. It's always a pleasure to go back to my favorite legal goofballs, and I really want to appreciate you guys just taking any time to watch these videos. So, with that said, I'll see you all next time. It's been a pleasure taking you on this little tour. Bye now!